Welcome to the Strategy Skills Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Safarova, and this episode is sponsored by strategytraining.com. You will be able to get key insights and action items from this upcoming episode at firmsconsulting.com/action, along with other recent episodes. This is a new thing that we are doing to make sure that you can make the most of each episode and to make sure that you don't have to make a lot of notes. And today we have with us Adam McGraw, a Fortune 100 VP turned entrepreneur and co-founder of Crew, a leadership community. Adam spent 12 years at American Express, where he rose to VP and earned recognition as a top 2% leader across the company. Adam, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
So, such a big shift for you, working with executives now. So much to discuss. I would love to learn more about the format that you use for Crew. How did you thought about it? Because there's so many things you can do. You can do online, you can do community online, you can do live events. How do you guys thought about it and what did you decide? And maybe also what changed over time as you tested different formats?
Yeah, I mean, at Crew right now, which is a VP and above leadership networking group or ecosystem, we're an invitation-based community. We try and really, curate it for folks that are in the VP and above through CEOs as well, founders, et cetera, so that they have this kind of safe white space atmosphere to really consistently plug in and build community, right? Not just transact network-wise in things that are typically narrow and niche, which is the way networking typically operates. It's industry focused. It's company. Your company tells you to go to something. It's vertical focused, or maybe it's in your city, or you're hanging out with folks that are in your same age range or gender ethnicity. We really love the idea of a melting pot for leaders when you think about all the things that you have to become conscious of, as well as well read on and all of that. And to have this safe space where transferable knowledge really takes place. And it really kind of resembles, if you think about it, the way most of us work in the real world. We're working in very diverse companies. We're working with diverse customer bases. We're typically operating around a lot of different types of leaders. So to have this non-political, non-bureaucratic place where you can tap into all these different types of, leaders, roles, company sizes, et cetera, is kind of cool and unique for a lot of us and something we're very passionate about. We're also very focused on a personal and professional blend, a place where, some of our folks say this is where they come to take their jacket off. As a leader, you often get into this rat race where you feel like you always have to have everything buttoned up. And, you're even in the networking, it's kind of like always wanting to put your best foot forward, not to show too many kinks in the armor. And Crew allows you to kind of not worry about that stuff. And so whether we're talking in our virtual environment, which is about probably 70% of the way we gather right now is through virtual cohorts and group chats. And of course, we have our app platform that's ring fenced for our group and one-to-one matching, all of that jazz. And then we do a lot of in-person as well. In all of those settings, there's always a blend of personal and professional. And the cool part of that is it's how we kind of accelerate rapid trust and bonding and connection, given that we are coming from so many diverse places and backgrounds. When we come in and we get to know each other on a personal level and talk about all the stuff we're trying to balance better on that side, within months, you feel like you've kind of known this person. And of course, all the networky stuff traditionally can still come through and happen. And then the other piece that, that we're very much continuously becoming even more focused on as we network together, as we support each other as a peer-to-peer ecosystem, is we really want this to be a place that leaders say being in Crew keeps me grounded and conscious and aware around, hey, am I getting as much meaning and fulfillment and juice out of my career here as I possibly can? We kind of joke we're all looking at a variation of the back nine of our career based on, we bring everybody in at a minimum 12 to 15 years of experience kind of in their career. So, you're looking at that back half, and the back half, it's not, you start thinking about things that go beyond typically just titles and money and just climbing up the first mountain that showed up in your horizon when you were in your 20s and early 30s, trying to get all your food safety and shelter accumulated. And it's a really healthy space for folks to really get refreshed and re-energized in lanes maybe they've been in for a while with some fresh perspective, or think about that 5 and 10 year roadmap and horizon with a broader lens of confidence, creativity, and vision, so that we really eliminate regrets and we really feel very, very proud about that legacy we hope to leave when we're eventually done with this career, right? So, but again, it's a blend of virtual and in person to try and accomplish kind of what I'd laid out there, which is our core ethos of why, our why, as far as the uniqueness of coming together in this group.
When people come to you applying to join, what is the biggest reason they come? Is it different from what they actually get inside the group and they feel, oh wow, I didn't even expected that, but that was even more important?
That's a really good question, and it probably it happens sometimes. So many of our members are coming in through a referral method. Members in here have people outside of the group that they think of and that are reaching out to them to say, hey, what do you like about what you're doing in crew? And that's really how probably 85% of the folks are coming in, which actually is why we can continue to curate it pretty effectively and in a targeted way. Because once you're in here, kind of what type of people will really bring value and also get a lot of, connection to it. But I think that so that helps, I think, bridge the gap on what people are expecting. But that said, I think people are typically thinking about increasing their true, authentic network when there's times of change and uncertainty and times of transition, which kind of happens to be all the time now, right? There is no long term, like stable and secure thing going on right now. It's ever since COVID, ever since obviously the introduction and overtaking here of AI related stuff, the macro stage that continues to have a lot of turbulence. This is kind of the new normal: constant change, constant uncertainty, constant transition, and leaders are really in the middle of all that. And so I think that's when people naturally pick their heads up and say, you know what, I need to have a place, or I need to have a group, and I need to broaden my network. I need to deepen my network beyond this superficial stuff that we do on LinkedIn and all these other social platforms. I need to go deeper. I need to really make sure I'm entrenching myself with a broader group, and that's a definite reason. And then I think the thing that maybe surprises folks that we hear the most, even though we try and say, hey, you'll get that in here, is the level of authentic, prioritized, and intentional connection leaders are giving each other in here that might have come in completely as strangers when they join and don't know a lot of the people that they're now interacting with all that deeply. And then noticing how quickly people openly give and support and unconditionally try and be there for each other. And especially once people go to one of our in-person events that we run these 3 major flagship events a year across the country, one in the beginning, middle, and one in the end. And when folks go to that, it's a whole day function, and they really get immersed then. Or, and they come out, many times they'll pull me aside in a reflective moment at the end and say, I have to tell you, I've been to a million events and group things and all that. I've never experienced anything like this. It really is special. You all are right. It's hard to describe, because I think we even still struggle to describe it to the outsider. But once you're here, it's just an entirely different level of open, authentic connection in that, with a bunch of people that are like you, right? In very similar phases of life, career.
And it is incredibly valuable, especially at that level. It's very hard to find people who are at that level and who are as driven as you, as committed as you to your career, and getting together and getting your jacket off,
That's right.
meaning that you feel comfortable to do that.
That's right. It is. It is rare, unfortunately. And again, I think we used to do it. We used to have some pockets, because if people stayed in jobs and companies for longer periods of time than they're able to now, or than they want to now even. And so you used to makeshift this, right? You'd have a group of 3 or 4 or 5 folks that all of you have been in the same company or same group for a long time. And that kind of becomes your little crew, you know? that you would have. But that's less and less, right? Because of the instability and the constant change. So what's always been a little bit of a lonely at the top analogy for leaders, I think, is lonelier now.
It is very lonely at the top,
Yeah.
definitely. I know a lot of leaders who feel that way, and communities like that make a huge difference. Could you elaborate more on how do you make sure that you provide everything that people need inside the community, and how do you decide what we're going to provide, what we're not going to provide? Do you, for example, also have different types of training on specific topics? Do you have one-on-one? Do you have group coaching?
Yeah, we do. We have all of that. And it's a it's a work in progress at all times, right? We're constantly iterating and re-envisioning what it is that we can do together. I do believe that we are accurately hitting the mark on a broad percentage of the population that joins the community as far as needs, tools and resources that helps them with, navigating how they operate in times of stress and adversity. We've got really unique neuroscience, positive psychology based frameworks and group coaching models around that. That everyone needs that. And quite frankly, most of the group stuff, most of the stuff you've had in commercial settings, it's, has either been kind of vanilla or watered down, or maybe it's been a long time and you didn't do it in a safe setting like this. So, that's some stuff that we know folks are very focused on. AI, of course, we know that that's something that everyone can benefit from, having as much immersion and exposure from as many diverse angles as possible. So we're hell bent on a lot of spaces where AI topics are being talked about and some thought leaders are being, showcased to really, help us stay ahead. Because unfortunately, if you're in a company, first of all, you're so heads down in tunnel vision through your day job. And then your company is deciding for you based on what your role and level and responsibilities are, what about AI they want you to know and think about. And that's okay, right? Because they have to determine what's prioritized and focused. But leaders want to be ahead, right? Like for me as a leader, I always wanted to know way beyond what my job scope was, because that's the only way I know that I'm preparing myself for bigger jobs, different jobs, right? Growth, constant growth. And so we really want to hit non-vanilla types of topics as well. So when we pick speakers, I mean, I personally am involved in handpicking every speaker topic and, trying to think of, is this something that they're always getting in their company settings? Is this a common thing, right? Or is this going to be a little bit outside the box, a little bit on the edges, a little bit on the fringes? We really like the stuff that's more on the edges and on the fringes. And that's stuff that we know, hey, this is interesting. I go to Crew to get this non-vanilla, non-watered down, non-politically, right, over-engineered kind of stuff that we can think about in a safe setting. So those are some examples, I would say, of things that we kind of know everyone needs. And then, also just a lot of melting pot atmospheres where we're letting the leaders in here coming from so many diverse backgrounds and places help guide different collective topics and different subject matters that we want to go deeper into, so that they can tell us. We don't, I always joke, like, I don't want to over engineer. Leaders want to lead, right? They don't just want to be lectured to, right? So we've got to strike that balance as well.
Of course. And one-on-one, how do you handle one-on-one? Because that can become very difficult to manage with a larger group.
Right. And, so everyone that's, here from in a very deep entrenched way, including those of us at the founding level of this, we give of our time as freely and openly as we possibly can. Things that we would have all, maybe charged money for, right? And been paid for coaching or consulting or whatever. And we give of that time and expertise across the board in here. So organic reaching out, DMing somebody in the app or putting a post up in our app and saying, "Does there anyone here?" And boom, you get. I mean, I remember there was this one post. This guy thought it was a dumb question, right? He said, "I'm going to throw out a dumb question, but I just kind of want some feedback." Got 21 responses within a couple of hours, including options to set up one-to-ones on that topic, for instance. That's what's, so people are able to get it when they need it. And then we do matching as well, where we're kind of trying to gently force the possibility of really synchronicity and serendipity and randomly meeting people throughout the community so that you're doing stuff not just in group session, even though I think the group stuff's awesome, but you're also having that opportunity to touch base one to one.
Makes a lot of sense. Can you take us inside one of those live events? What does it entail? What would someone experience?
Yeah, we have a lot of times we have group coaching in the mornings. Some options. We've got some really cool, unique, ethos aligned coaches that will give up some of their time and talent, and so that's folks the stuff folks will sign up for in the mornings. We typically have like a welcome reception for the new folks that have never been to an event now, so that you kind of get this early access, and the founders are there, or some of our key advisors, some of our earliest members are there just to welcome them. I mean, Chris, I'm very conscious about making this a welcoming environment on the networking side for introverted leaders as much as extroverted. And there's a lot. I mean, people are shocked. I don't know what our percentage is, but I actually think it might veer close to 50% of our VP and above leadership audience would probably categorize themselves into an introvert or something in the middle, even though they are the leader, right? And that includes myself. I'm an introvert most of the time, and I can have moments where I'd step into being extroverted. So we really, now that we're getting bigger, we're being very conscious and aware of creating other areas where that small intimate atmosphere, which is how we started when we were first getting going, can happen. So that kind of a newcomer reception where 50 folks are in there and you're getting to get connected before the day really even gets rolling. Then we'll have a nice lunch, and and it's fun, right? I mean, it's a Saturday vibe, so we're picking really cool, unique venues, places where people are normally getting either married or or holding their 50th birthday party kind of thing. I mean, stuff that, again, I want to go to this. I don't want to sit in another ballroom again, honestly, in my life, if I don't have to. That's like kind of corporate and stale. I want to do stuff that's fun and energizing. I mean, we want this to be like, I want folks by the end of the day to feel like, even though I dedicated and carved out time in my busy life and work week, I came out of here actually feeling juiced up and energized because I had some fun, and obviously I learned some stuff, and I got to be myself, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll roll into a combo of some really cool, unique speaker topics, as well as intentional group networking facilitation, so that you're getting to learn, you're getting some brain food. We're talking about some things that help keep you connected to our ethos: authentic connection, diverse experiences, meaning and fulfillment type stuff. But then you're also having the opportunity to get circulated around the room a little bit more beyond the lunch that you've already done or the group coaching you've done. And then we'll always end our day with, there's music going, really fun, high energy cocktail receptions, and into fun dinners and even some after party stuff. So it's a good time, a good blend of, focused, intentional learning and reflection, networking, and really bridging that connection, even if you're on the introverted side. And then, of course, energizing fun.
Sounds like a fun day. So it's one day.
As of right now, they're kind of one day. We have a welcome reception the evening before, where about 80% of the attendees are already in town, and we're getting that together. That's also a fun kind of thing that we're doing. So, we'll continue to iterate on this. This is this was basically like our third year operating that we've kind of run on this one day model that seems to fit in for a lot of busy executives, and it's kind of like, I always like that thought of, you kind of leaving wanting just a little more, you know, not overdoing it. And I think that we're walking that balance, knowing how busy everyone is.
100%. Can you take us back to early days, 3 years ago when you started? How did you put together this initial group, the founding members?
Yeah. Um, yeah, because that backstory, was a 10-year journey for me. I pick up a book in the airport when I'm a director at Amex, and called Positive Intelligence, which was a #1 New York Times bestseller for about a year and a half back in 2012. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it spoke to me very accurately and uncomfortably about things I've struggled with my entire life. It's the neuroscience and positive psychology around how all of us get in our own way when there's stress and adversity, which is kind of every day as you get older. And I felt I had the audacity to reach out to the author after I read the book, and we sparked up a great friendship. And I went through deep rooted, training curriculums that he ran groups of executives through. It was transformational for me. It led to a relationship that we cultivated together for about 7 years. And then I left Amex, and on a very difficult decision to go in this bootstrap setup with him and about 10 engineers as what was going to be basically an app company for this kind of coaching model and stuff. And in the middle of that decision, 6 months in, COVID hit. And the pivot I made then was I went off and I started doing this group coaching with the framework that we had now created credentials and an actual executive coaching certification around. Because Shirzad, who's the author of Positive Intelligence, was running the largest executive coach training company in the world called CTI. So he knew firsthand how all this research he had done would fit into a real strong credential platform for coaches. And I, as kind of an understudy of him, right, that had this unique exposure to someone I would have never been able to afford on an executive coaching level, was able to go out and speak from a practitioner's angle on this. So I did that for 4 years, and I did this group coaching work with groups of 10 or 20 or so at a time, multi-month experiences. And I did it with about 500 leaders across all different kinds of companies and role charters and industries. So, and then that's where my idea for Crew started to emerge, right? I was wanting to continue stuff that I was experiencing in these multi-month group leadership experiences that were very authentic, very open, very vulnerable. And I was also, of course, networking my butt off as a solopreneur consulting coach. And I was like, there's something here, right? And that's when I kind of called in my dad, who's my co-founder. So we've got a father-son, co-founding deal here. I pulled him into this. He was just about to relax because he had just sold his company as CEO, and he had a much more successful executive career than I did. But he was very passionate about this. He was my leadership role model on a lot of things that I believed in, and also felt kind of the gap here that he had in his career of not having really a safe outlet and space once he started to get into bigger roles, bigger jobs, and keep trying new things. And so I know that that's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but when I first started, I called people that I knew would tell me the truth. Honestly, Chris, right? When you're vetting out something, it's easy to just like talk to the person that you know is going to tell you it's going to be great. And I kind of chose a couple of people that I just really trusted, that I had great relationships with over a long time commercially, that I knew would be very honest, maybe even brutally honest. And several of those folks that I reached out to just to kick the tires on this concept and this idea were extremely excited about the possibility and said, "Hey, I'd love to be a part." They were willing to help, right? And that's kind of what led to that first roundtable of founding member advisor folks.
Very interesting. How did you figure out pricing during those early days?
That's a good question. It's hard on this because this is, I mean, unless people have been in networking community kind of groups, because there are others out there that are benchmark standards, but most of them are typically like geared towards the CEO levels, or it's an industry thing that mostly people's companies are always putting them in there for, like GBTAs and these financial groups and all of that. So this kind of like this whole holistic leadership, there really isn't a lot of comparison models that are apples to apples. There's a lot of apples to oranges and stuff. But we kind of decided on a number that felt like, to me, anything that is a little bit of a what you put in is what you're going to get out model, which is a little bit of what networking and a community aspect is going to be. I mean, if everyone is in your community is only worried about watering their own grass, right, and taking, then that community isn't going to thrive very long, right? Great communities thrive because people are thinking about how to water everyone's grasses. How does everyone's lawns and yards benefit here, right? We come together, we give of our time and our talents, and that's what creates real flourishing communities. So knowing we wanted to inspire that, and we wanted to really honestly keep people away that are all about taking and transacting, we needed that skin in the game component. So we had to put a price that I think was high enough that took out the skimmers of life, the ones that just want to come in and just, right, have I'm joking a little bit, but suck up some free booze and see what they can get out of a couple hours, and then you're never going to see them again. We didn't want that in here. We're intentional about every vetting conversation that we're not interested in that. If that's what you want, you're not going to fit in and you're going to feel out of place. And so just that balance of skin in the game, but also, what can they afford realistically, as well. If some have this company sponsored, because more and more companies are realizing, hey, there's a benefit to my leaders, especially having outlets that support them, having places where they gain external perspective so that we have a lot of fresh eyes and ideas coming into the organization. I mean, smart, advanced companies sponsor that crap all day long, right? And know that that's a retention and a talent activation strategy. But then there's a lot of people that are doing this purely on their own. Even if their company would sponsor it, they're like, no, this is mine. I'm doing this for me. I want to put the oxygen mask on myself. I want to invest in myself so that I'm not so dependent on my company or even my industry dictating what's going to happen to me for the next 10 years, you know? And so it was a fine line there of just kind of picking numbers that we thought were, honestly, I think, very competitive and even below a lot of things that are at all comparable, but had that skin in the game element that attracted the right type of person for right reasons.
That makes a lot of sense, that kind of thinking. If you feel comfortable sharing, what number did you go with during those early days?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of been near the same since then, to be honest. They've adjusted slightly, but we kind of had the 2,500 for VP level tier because we have tiers, so that we curate even internally in certain group settings with the right peer group, peer to peer, elbow to elbow. So our traditional VP tier is 2,500. And then our more senior or C-level tier is 5,000. And that's where we started. And I think when in the beginning we were, there was some discounting, for early founding members that are grandfathered in and all of that. And there's monthly payment plan options as well, kind of a thing, because people's predicaments change on occasion. So, we have multiple options that seems to fit most of the folks in those tiers.
And 2,500 to 5,000 per year is very affordable.
If you do, quite frankly, if you do 40 to 50% of the things that are optionally laid out for you to participate in the community, I think it's more than an ROI. I mean, you come to one of our events, it's a $1,500 a person value already. We're spending a lot of money on these events. So, you just get to one. If you think about how much an event is when you randomly sign up for some of these things, a couple $1,000, and we're not really doing that here. You're getting coaching and you're getting access to events. Most we're doing is a small registration fee just to streamline the RSVP process and cover cancellation, attrition, whatever. But yeah, I think I want it to feel like an overwhelming. I want the model. We really preach go giving in here, and I really want the model to feel like we're giving as a community. That if you come in here and you do 70% of it, you're feeling like, man, I'm getting. We've had people tell me we're undercharging. We have members saying we are severely undercharging. Now those are members that are participating and getting their laid out value, right? But that's okay. In the early foundational years, I hope that many people find that, yeah, I'm getting a lot of value out of this. And sometimes they're getting a relationship or a job that, how do you put a price on some of that too, by the way? The right connection at the right time that you would have had no idea how to get a hold of, how to get access to. That's quite hard to quantify. And quite frankly, on if it means a new job, if it means a new partner relationship, if it means some top talent, that's normally tens of thousands of dollars of value. And that happens all the time in here if you just lean in and hang around a little bit.
That is very true. What are some of the most challenging parts right now in managing this organization?
Ooh, well, it is a startup, so it's hard to, we're growing, and that's good, and we want to maintain the foundation and the intimacy and the intentionality that we think makes this special and has made it special from the beginning. So, how do you grow and maintain intimacy or that tightness that you have, that uniqueness that you have? That is that's we spend so much time thinking about that, talking about that, deliberately trying to make the right testing decisions on, through the feedback loop that we get through the community. Just running a community like this, it a lot of times because of the way it's run and there's such a giving atmosphere and it's kind of B2C, right? Because you're going straight to the consumer. Sometimes it kind of feels almost church like, I guess, and so um, sometimes people have different opinions on what should be charged for and how much, and you try to have some terms of service so that you can actually run a business and project how to operate the growth of a business. And everyone, there's a lot of exception thinking as far as, can I do this, can I do that? And it's hard because sometimes people take this stuff personally, and I guess they're not viewing us all the time as actually like trying to be a company that, quite frankly, to this point had not raised any money. We've intentionally bootstrapped it so that we didn't have to have all these hands in the pot making this thing not as unique and cool and different as we could. And that's sometimes hard for folks to get their heads around, I guess. And we try not to take it personally, and we're trying to just help them understand the business component behind this at this point in order for us to keep doing this and running it at the level of expectations that are honestly continuing to grow with the group. We do have to have business guidelines and guardrails in place, or it all goes away. And it's hard because we want every person to feel significant and valued, and we want people to know that we're empathetic to everything that they have going on. But you're running a business, right? So
Definitely. What have you noticed changed in terms of what people value the most or what they're looking for in the last 3 years that you have been running the business?
well, the thing that honestly, it's kind of just the thing that initially probably I would say shocked me, that continues to show me, whoa, this is a people really want this, is the in-person connection component. So knowing how much people are stretched on time and over busy and overbooked, my initial thought, and the way that I honestly ran all of my coaching and consulting, was it's got to be almost all virtual, because I'm just thinking everyone is so busy. Everyone is just, everything's got to be on an app, virtual, all that. And we do all that. But what I didn't realize is how much people are craving the in-person component and willing to commit to it and spend time and resources and money around it. And so we are continuing to invest in, how do we have more in-person touch points? We're going to get more and more creative with local markets now. So that even between these cool flagship events that we really encourage an all hands, participation around, and we get great attendance, but we have these markets of New York and Atlanta and Texas cities and San Francisco that are naturally already growing. And so we're really going to try and nurture that. It's kind of the next phase that we're in here, of more and more local and regional touch points too, where maybe it's not a full day, but you just have more of these authentic connection spots. And then that's cool because even if I'm not living in that market, a lot of people travel into these markets for work. And so this is all broadcast in our community, and folks will hit it because they had business travel. And so they'll overlap it with a crew meetup, right? Or our new dinner series that we're going to launch. And so that's stuff that I've realized as time's going on. I think people are underlyingly craving that, maybe even more than they realize, this place, again, with the right audience, relatable audience, to have this real safe, authentic connection zone, and to be able to do it in person where the most authentic level of connection can happen.
What do you think people are looking for when they're thinking, I want in person?
I think a part of what executives and leaders honestly sometimes probably feel like they struggle with, I'm speaking from my own personal experience and people I've gotten to coach in very authentic atmosphere that were very vulnerable and open to me. Uh, like real, I think deeper friendship levels. You spend so many hours a week working, and that's a heads down tunnel vision atmosphere for many of us. Oftentimes, even unfortunately, it's a political cutthroat atmosphere that we might be navigating. right? With a lot of change and disruption, new people coming in, all out all the time. So, and then you hit your weekends and you got to get everything you possibly can into your weekends. You got to try and take care of yourself. You got to be right, the parent and the spouse and the partner, and have some fun and all that. And then the next thing you know, you're doing it over and over again. And in a year just goes by in a blink, and a decade goes by in a couple blinks. So, I think it's harder right now because of how busy everyone is and the amount of change that's going on and everything, for folks to feel like I have a lot of friends. And I think that you start to realize as you get older that relatability component. Do people relate to me? Can they understand me? Can they understand what I'm going through at this phase of life and work? I think that starts to become a much more common denominator for deep, authentic connection and friendship than it did in the earlier phases of life. In the earlier phases of life, your deep, authentic friends and connections oftentimes were just literally the people you could have the most fun with. That you just felt like you vibed with the best, and it was relaxing and you could trust them, and you all like to do the same things generally for fun. If you think about teens, 20s, or even early 30s. But when you hit this back nine and life's just heavier and more complicated and busier, I think the relatability factor is a very powerful component to going, man, I feel like these people really get me and understand me. Because I even find that I love my family. I have an amazing extended family, and I love our friends and everything. But very few of them get very deep with me on anything that I'm actually dealing with. I very few. In fact, if I think about the average dinner party I go to, thing I go to, like the level of questions that go below 30,000 feet, other than how you doing, how's work, what do you do these days, right? That's it. Then it's all this small talk, right? And that's okay, because a lot of times weekends again are about just clearing our head, having a good time, being around. But I think having a place where we can weave in and out of, here's all the stuff that's keeping me up at night, right? I'm dealing with this and that and this and that. And then we're also able to joke and have fun and just be open, and people can give you advice and feedback and say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, or I totally know what you're going through. People are needing that more than they maybe even recognizing.
Yes. Would you say that people are feeling lonely even though they're surrounded by a lot of people?
I do think that. I do think a lot of leaders, again, I think that most leaders don't feel confident enough to be that vulnerable and say that on a pedestal and post about it on LinkedIn, obviously. But knowing the behind the scenes conversations I've had with many of these types of leaders that have tremendous brands and followings and titles and money and all of that, yes, I do. I do feel like, and I think there's a lot of news and stuff and deep psychology research out there saying that this assumption I'm making is quite possibly accurate. But being in this world where your day job is just about showing that you're buttoned up, and as the leader, people are dependent on you just being able to confidently roll through everything and guide everyone else through everything. That is not how human beings operate, right? There is not no human being is capable of just always being the buttoned up leader. Every human being needs a place where they can go and feel like they don't have to be the leader, and people will help lead them, help inspire them. I always joke, like, you have permission here today to let yourself become re-inspired, because I know your typical job is you're supposed to be the one thinking about how to keep everyone else inspired. Guess what? Today you can sit back, and if you're not feeling inspired, if you're feeling burnt out and all of that, that's our job as your community to give you that juice. There's a reason they tell us put oxygen masks on ourselves first in the airlines, because it works. And we do not do it. We do not do it. Hard driving, high achieving kinds of leaders and executives stop doing it pretty soon, pretty early on in career and life. And they end up with a lot of burnouts. They end up with burnouts either in their work productivity, in their relationship dynamics, in their own wellness and happiness levels. And we're trying to help prevent those burnouts. We're trying to help them plug those holes in those leaky buckets. And so it's a very inspiring and not easy mission, but they need it. Everyone, we all need it.
We 100% need it. Adam, and how do you decide how much to fit in into 1 month, 1 week, given how busy everyone is?
Yeah, Chris, it's test and learn, and most of these folks have pretty decent business maturity, and they know there is no one size fits all thing. If you ask a group of 100 leaders how much they want to get together, what they want to focus on, you're going to get 100 answers. I mean, because leaders all think quite independently, right? So, there's some general things of we know that people can only handle so much. So, this is the good news about everybody that is at the foundational level of this, including myself and my co-founder and all of our team members. We've all been in these kinds of jobs. So, we know, you know, we know how busy everyone is. We know how stretched everyone is. So it's just that right fine line where we think we're providing enough consistency or reps, so to speak, like if you think about a workout analogy, where they're going to get a benefit and enough touch points so that if I had a real busy season because I just got a new job or a new boss, and for the last couple months, I haven't been able to participate much, there's enough stuff here that as soon as I'm ready to start leaning back in, boom, this stuff is here and I can feel caught up. And I'm so glad I have this lifeline, so to speak, in this system. But it's a lot of test and learn, and it's a lot of realizing, that's why we record a lot of stuff. Said, look, if you can't make it, this is recorded. You can catch it in the app. I do think our app engagement is something that, will probably grow over time as we grow as a community, because then you've got, instead of the noisy, algorithm laden atmosphere of a LinkedIn, you've got this safe, authentic, ring fenced atmosphere of our app platform that we talk together. So, all those kinds of things allow when people are in busy seasons to not feel burdened by this.
What is your vision for Crew?
It's coming already through a place that, again, for leaders to say being a part of this community was, I would love for a lot of leaders to say it was transformationally helpful, not just like it helped me get a job, or I found this vendor in here, I found this business partner in here, or whatever. That happens all the time. But because of that whole person support and that true community intentionality, that people say that being a part of this group was, transformationally helpful at a very pivotal time in my life and career, which is typically what the mid years point is, between mid 30s to mid 50s, that back nine kind of meat of the career. I think people need a different level of support and resource than they currently get in their political company atmospheres, and honestly in their personal lives, that again don't have the relatability, even if people do want to help them. And I think we fit right into that middle spot, kind of this indirectly quite therapeutic zone that can be, really transformational if you just are able to lean in a decent amount.
Of course. And the last question that we have time for probably today is, you mentioned that about 85% of people coming in through referrals.
Mm-hmm.
How do other members find you generally?
Well, we definitely socialize a lot on LinkedIn, and a lot of our members, are very active about and being engaged here. And we, as just a scrappy grassroots, bootstrapped community, are posting stuff. And so I think that's where we gain a lot of organic exposure. And then we have our website, which is crewexec.com. And, myself as a founder is active on LinkedIn every day. It's the only social media platform as an introvert that I've forced myself to get comfortable being visibly present and participating on every day. And so all of us that are actively engaged in the community are pretty much on there and communicating on there as well, supporting each other on there. And then we have, of course, the website where we definitely give, I think there's a good sense of the vibe in on crewexec.com as well. So those are the simple, but, so far effective places where people can kind of, hear about us and check us out.
Adam, I really enjoyed our discussion. Thank you so much for being here. Where can our listeners learn more about you? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, like I mentioned already, I'm always on LinkedIn, and I'm I respond to every single message I ever get, and I love meeting new folks. It's a part of how Crew help happen for me. So I'm very interested in just the power of being open to new connections and all of that. So I'm available there. And then our website has a explore component. We have conversations with every prospective member. We want to make sure it's a good mutual fit, So the first step once you go on our website and say click on learn more or join or whatever is we will set up a call with one of the founding members and senior members of the team to really talk through, what this thing's all about and see if it's something that sounds interesting and like it's a good fit.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we have 6 minutes. I will ask you one more question
Sure.
that I love asking if there's time. Over your entire career so far, your life so far,
Mm-hmm.
what were 2, 3 aha moments, realizations that really changed the way you look at life or the way you look at business?
Yeah. It's actually funny. You're asking me three, and it's they're right on the tip of my tongue. The first one was in college, and I was really trying to not come out of college and just do a regular job or do a corporate job. That my dad did corporate stuff. I followed him around. We moved all over the place, and as much as I loved what he did and was proud of him, I just didn't want to do it. So I read this book called Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, which is a classic old, right, positive psychology focused book. And I was probably a junior in college at the University of Arizona. And boy, it just hit for me. And I just realized right then that power of, where our mind goes and as far as being able to have any ability to tap into what we're truly capable of and how the world starts to kind of unfold for you. If you really actually believe it, doors open for you. And I was just like enamored with that ideology, that you don't have to have it all figured out, that it literally starts as simple as that, which is simple, but extremely uncomfortable for most people to think, ooh, I can really think as big as I would like. And that might actually happen. That is not, because we have very, very deep rooted limiting judgmental beliefs of our potential and all the stuff we've heard over our lives about all the things we're not perfect or great at that subconsciously get in the way of that. And I was like, boy, I want to do that. It makes total sense. That was number one. The second one was when I was getting into sales, which I ended up surrendering to back after 5 or 6 years of doing entrepreneurial stuff. I decided, well, now I want to make real money and I don't want to get left behind by all my friends that have now gotten into their 20s and are all starting to make good money and buy homes and cars. And so I jump into this predictable revenue lane, which was selling. And I start with Amex right before the recession happened in 2007. And I start getting into it was a B2B sale. It was selling to mid-market companies, calling on CFOs, CEOs of these companies, selling Amex payment platform products. And I very quickly realized the power that getting to the right person, which back then was again a very old but still extremely effective book, Selling DeVito, the very important top officer. It was absolutely essential to everything I wanted to do in sales and in selling myself for my own personal aspirations, even internally, like in networking and political atmospheres of the big company I was in, being able to get to the right person and understand how to communicate with them at those senior levels and having that equal business stature. When I was only 27, 28 years old, it was absolutely game changing for me. And I took every detail of that plus my own learnings, and I focused on that for my entire 12-year tenure in every phase of leadership about really how important it is for us in every role to learn how to be really comfortable with that. And that has carried me well. And quite frankly, it's the reason I felt why I could reach out to Shirzai, right? So my thinking big thought, I'm allowed to reach out to this guy and he might want to take my call. And my veto thought process was, I know exactly how to communicate to this guy to get him to take my call. And so I emailed him. So these things compounded for me. And that led to a relationship that ultimately changed my life and my career trajectory and gave me a lifeline into a lane that I would tell you if I was about 15, 18, I would have told you this is the lane I'm in now. Coaching, working with others, helping them personally and professionally in inspirational ways. That would have been exactly what I would have told you I wanted to do when I was in my teens. And that people around me would have said, that's what he probably should do. I knew that about myself early on, but I had no idea how to get to this spot. without going through the journey I went through and compounding these big moment takeaways, right, that happened. And then the third one, I think, is just enjoyment of redefining success, you know, that I've really learned through the coaching journey, through going out on my own, taking off the title, becoming a nobody, selling for a company nobody had heard for initially, going out selling a coaching model nobody had heard of, building from zero after having this very nice, cushy, executive income for 12 years through the COVID years is when I was building my coaching business. And then eventually having the audacity to try and launch this new community when there's already tons of groups and communities that exist. And what I've learned now is, and the third aha moment that's come through for me in Crew is you have to learn how to define your own success. And I think it's the hardest thing for people to do. Everyone is letting other people's versions of success run and dictate their lives and their vision and ultimately their trajectory. And until you start defining what it is that you feel will make you successful, which is quite frankly a heavily inside game and has very little to do with external validation, right? It's about eliminating regrets. It's about things that make you feel like you're growing and inspired. It's about things that help you feel like what you do actually is meaningful and purpose driven. When you figure that out, you feel like you've won. And you're no longer at the mercy of hitting a top of a mountain, getting to a certain monetary or title level, waiting till I'm 60 and have a bunch of free time. You can start to rewire happiness and joy and fulfillment in your career and life in the middle years, which we call in our community the golden years. The golden years are not a retirement phase. The golden years are the years you're most healthy, most active, and can contribute most to society. These are them. They need to feel golden. And for many people, they feel like a burden and they feel like I'm just getting through and I'm just surviving and I'm doing it for some other time and for somebody else's stamp of approval and all of that stuff. And I think that defining your own form of success, through doing your own things, trying your own things, is a big part, and the third part that's been most pivotal in my career so far.
Adam, thank you again so much. Such a great way to end our session today. Really enjoyed our discussion. Our guest today again has been Adam McGraw, a Fortune 100 VP turned entrepreneur and co-founder of Crew, an executive community. And I hope you really enjoyed it as much as I did. And you can get insights and action items from this session today at firmsconsulting.com/action. You can also get a few gifts from us. You can access episode 1 of how to build a consulting practice at firmsconsulting.com/build. You can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. You can get McKinsey and BCG resume example, which is a resume that led to offers from both of those firms. And it is a great example at any level of seniority. You can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to connect with you all next time.